Okay, guys, we're ready to go live now.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello? Can you hear me? I can't hear. Let me see.
We can hear you, Mayor.
Oh, okay. When we're going to, can we start? Yes. Yes.
Echo was coming when someone says something.
We have to get someone else to say something.
Councilman Deslamy, can you hear us?
I didn't hear him. He got it.
Are you ready? Oh,
We're ready.
Okay. Yeah, it's better.
You guys.
You're gonna roll cowboy? Okay.
was, do we have everybody?
Like there are, from what I understand, there's 4 council persons present.
How many?
I think it's 4. It's Councilwoman Estimate Irvin. I thought she was on the line.
IT, are we ready to go live?
I'm here.
Thank you. Councilwoman is okay. Can I start? IT.
Yes, you're live, Mayor. You can begin.
Oh, okay. Good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Today is July 15, 2021. This is our budget workshop. We have council members, and we are live. And from what I understand, do we have the clerk department to do the roll call? Yes.
I don't know if the clerk's on.
You have Madam Clerk here? Everybody.
Councilwoman Estimate Irvin,
Oh,
Present.
Councilman Galvin, Scott Galvin, Councilman Desilme,
Here.
Councilwoman Timothy,
Here.
Mayor Bieneme.
yeah.
Mayor,
Thank you very much. And now please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance before we move forward. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the Republic of
For which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And now we have a budget presentation by the administration.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Greetings, good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and council members. During today's workshop, I'm going to provide a brief background and we'll present some preliminary assumption for next year's budget. Most importantly, we will hear from you to make sure that the fiscal year 2022 budget reflects your vision and priorities. As we continue to feel the economic effects of the global pandemic, the administration's main focus is to provide a balanced budget that reflects the priorities of the council in a fiscally responsible manner. As a municipality, it is our responsibility to provide quality services and programs in our city, especially as it relates to public safety, public utilities, transportation infrastructure, and building compliance. In the past year, even given our restraints with COVID-19, the city has continued to do its best to provide our residents the support and services they deserve. Last year at this time, the city was facing a $14 million general fund deficit. We're pleased to report that the deficit has been reduced by more than half compared to last year. Our ending fund balance for fiscal year 2020 reflects a deficit of negative $5,018,744. We are making progress. However, this is primarily due to large one-time revenue from the sale of land. Our challenge ahead is our declining revenues. In fiscal year 2020, we suffered a loss of $9.6 million in revenues, and we are uncertain when or how revenues will rebound as we continue through the pandemic. Despite the declines, one of the significant ways the city has grown is through an increase in ad valorem taxes as a result of increased property value and the expansion of the city limits. Last year, we made some tough decisions to increase fees in the enterprise funds and reduce subsidies of city services, ensuring that we can continue to have the capital infrastructure to provide competent services to our residents. We passed a balanced budget with lower revenue estimate last year And if our revenues come in as expected, our annual deficit will be significantly lower than it had been in recent years, contributing to our general fund deficit. Our end-of-year projections would be a slight deficit due mainly to non-participation in furloughs from union members and less than anticipated savings from personnel cuts in fiscal year 2021. I'd just like to take a moment to share some highlights that we've had despite our financial position. Last year, we were able to hold 22 curbside food distributions. We served approximately 580 households and made home deliveries to approximately 125 homebound residents. We were ready to act with COVID relief and secured $1.1 million of CARES Act funding through the county to support our community, aiding local businesses, aiding residents, and providing educational opportunities. We mobilized 14 vaccination events over the span of 90 days, providing 818 vaccines. We completed the Pioneer Boulevard renovation financed by the CRA. We completed our installation of residential parking signs in the controlled residential parking areas. We completed the EV charging station installation downtown. We completed storm sensor installation, so we have now 30 new storm sensors to provide real-time storm data. We've also pushed our priority capital projects off the ground. Specifically with Cagney Park, we finalized the $5 million allocation from the county, and our schematic design is complete, as we saw in our meeting on Tuesday. We will move into the next phase of construction with Cagney Park to start in fiscal year 2022. We also started preliminary site design for Solomia Park. At the city, we were able to complete citywide customer service training. And currently, we've been moving underway with our technology improvements with a new system so that we can put some of our city services online and improve public-facing processes, including permitting. We successfully advocated for the inclusion of the 123rd Street train stop for future revitalization of our downtown, and the county has currently submitted the 123 stop for federal NEPA studies. We have also maintained one of the lowest crime rates in this city's history, and we improved drainage with our Northeast 147th Street drainage project. We've completed 4 traffic studies for our neighborhoods, and we're currently preparing to implement some of those recommendations to improve traffic with common devices. We also prioritize grant opportunities with a citywide coordinated effort for additional grants, and we found that we've had some additional revenue through grants with parks, with libraries, and with public works. We completed our vulnerability study that was grant funded, positioning the city to tackle its environmental challenges like flooding and sea level rise. And we've continued to work towards providing additional services. While we've made a lot of progress, we have more to do to revitalize the city and work through our continued challenges ahead. As we did last year, there are some decisions to make today in terms of ensuring our financial viability and making sure that we can provide the services to the residents. In looking at the fiscal year 22 priorities, the administration has outlined that we'll be looking in our priorities in different areas. First and foremost, our finances. We're going to be forward-looking to try to create new revenue sources for the city to reduce dependence on taxes and state shared revenues that have declined. And we'll take an aggressive approach to revenue collection issues to address our growing receivables and enterprise funds. We'll also address infrastructure, including beginning design on needed projects to address flooding, traffic issues, and mainly we'll be able to primarily use some of the ARP funds to get to those projects. We're also going to provide additional support with the ARPA funds to provide the assistance programs and grants that we need to help our businesses and our residents to help ensure North Miami's economy continues to grow. And we'll be investing in technology initiatives. We're currently going to be looking at advanced metering, a robust Technomi initiative, and online services for doing business with the city in other ways. With respect to our FY22 budget that we will be proposing, that we plan to propose in September. As you know, as over the past 5 fiscal years, North Miami has not increased the tax rate. It is the will of the council to maintain the 7.5 millage rate. In the fiscal year 2022 budget, we will try to stay the course. There are inevitable increases to the budget, including rising healthcare costs, pension liability, and workers' compensation. In fiscal year 2021, we cut full-time and part-time positions, And in order to sustain those cuts, we reduced service levels. Of note, we reduced library hours and we kept the majority of our parks closed, in part due to the pandemic, but also in part to have savings. In both areas, it was necessary due to staff cuts, and a significant portion of our savings was due directly attributed to closed parks and those reduction of hours. What we did note, however, was those services were some of the same services that were requested the most by residents during the pandemic. We also instituted once a month furloughs for non-unionized employees. As you know, the unions opt to participate in any of the cost-reducing measures. However, during this fiscal year, only the non-union city employees continued. While it helped with savings, it also reduced productivity and morale without participation from other members. As a result, we will not be proposing additional furloughs or additional personnel cuts for the proposed FY22 budget. In order to restore certain services and programs, specifically in our parks, we do expect to bring back not the same number, but some number of part-time positions if we would like to open up the parks. In order to do that, we plan to do it on a phased approach so that we can still keep the costs down, but still allow our residents to enjoy our parks and our open spaces. The additions to this budget are aligned with achieving the stated goals of the council. Having heard from the council that economic development is a strong priority for fiscal year 2022 and into the future, we plan for a strong emphasis on economic development. Recognizing that it's going to ensure the city's future growth, this budget will reflect a city investment to attract new businesses to the city in our most needed corridors, including our initiative to bring technology to North Miami that was directed by the council earlier this year. Some of the key budget assumptions include that we wouldn't be extending the furloughs, that there would be no merit increase, no COLA increase. We would return a limited number of city-funded events and would be pushing to have any other additional events to be sponsored privately, and some limited key additions in clerk's office, attorney's office, and in the economic development and finance area to assist us with some of our collections and receivables. And we did keep the same commitment level with respect to supporting MOCA as they are working on their strategic plan to become less reliant on the city. It is important to note that each of our union contracts expire at the end of this fiscal year, and we are in negotiations. Our estimates would ultimately be affected by any finalized agreement. In addition, to fund previous and upcoming priorities, some additional dollars have identified that are needed, including Breeze Swept Tot Lot, as well as facilitating a Wildcat Center acquisition. And there is a possibility that we may need additional to complete the bleachers at the North Miami Stadium. We've received our completed water rate study, and in line with the study from Black & Veatch, we would need to increase the water and sewer rates to meet the state requirements. We also anticipate the necessity to possibly raise permit fees as well in our building fund, which is a special revenue fund, to offset what we've noticed will be an increased amount of employee time and resources that will be needed. As we've seen the recent incident that's happened that has led us to have to move towards more inspections. As you know, state law requires that the city must present a balanced budget. However, the projection with all the current assumptions as outlined in the forthcoming presentation estimates about a $7.7 million gap. In order to balance the budget, we will need the council to once again consider a 4/5 vote to waive the city's requisite factor to use the reserves in this budget, and we would also have to look for additional cuts. With all that in mind, today's workshop will help us frame a budget that will address the city's deficit, maintain vital and essential city services. During today's budget workshop, staff will report on our analytical findings and budgetary projections for 2022. listen to your feedback, and make a note of your additional priorities before the hearing proceedings in September. I will also meet with you, each of you individually, as we continue to prepare the budget. The workshop discussion today will help guide staff as we formulate the city's FY 2022 budget. I'll now turn it over to Ms. Shonda Singleton Taylor for a presentation, followed by an open discussion between the mayor and council. We will take questions after the presentation.
All right, good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and City Council. I'm Shonda Singleton Taylor, Budget Director, and present to you the budget workshop. Next slide. All right, today's workshop will provide an overview of the fiscal 22 budget development timeline. We'll review our millage rates as well as take a look at our general fund overview. Also talking about our general fund budget assumptions that were included, as well as we'll take a look at the building fund overview. We will also review the sanitation, stormwater, and water and sewer rates, as well as discuss the administration priorities, as well as mayor and council priorities. Next slide. This slide shows our fiscal 22 budget timeline. As you can see, we started June 1st, receiving the preliminary tax roll from the property appraiser, followed by the certified tax roll on July 1st from the property appraiser's office. Here, I would also like to highlight that the first public hearing will be held on September 3rd. For the tentative millage rate adoption, as well as the second public hearing will be on September 23rd. Next slide. All right, this slide represents our millage rate history, and here really just want to point out that the city's proposed millage rate is 7.5 and has remained constant since fiscal 2017. Next slide. And as we can see, taking a look at our millage rate history, this chart shows our millage rate since 2013. As you can see, we were at 8.1, and that rate has continued to decline. And in fiscal 2017, the rate was reduced to 7.5 and has remained constant, again, with our proposed rate for 22 being 7.5. Remaining the same. Next slide. This slide shows some of the millage rate scenarios. And with that, this shows our fiscal 21 final based on our millage rate of 7.5, with our ad valorem taxes at about $27.7 million and proposed taxes at 7.5 based on a total taxable value just under $4 billion. Our ad valorem taxes are projected to be at $29.8 million. That's at 100%. This represents about a $2 million increase to the general fund over fiscal 2021. Next slide, please. This slide represents, this really shows you how the dollars are allocated in terms of the total tax bill. So title city millage rate only represents 32.7% of the total tax bill. As you can see, Miami-Dade School Board receives about 32.97%, followed by the city of North Miami, 32.7%. Miami-Dade County receives about 31%, and the Children's Trust Fund Authority Trust Authority received 1.96%, as well as some other small entities such as Okeechobee Basin at 0.52%, South Florida Water Management District 0.48%, 0.17% goes to Everglades Construction, and 0.14% goes to Florida Inland Navigation. Next slide, please. Some of our general fund assumptions that were used in the fiscal 22 budget assumes a millage rate of 7.5. It also includes the FPL rate increase of 4%, which we would see on the revenue side as well as the expenditure side. We've also included a $5 million fund reserve, and that is per the city's ordinance. The assumptions include contractual obligations, and then we also are assuming no furloughs in this budget, no additional full-time personnel reductions, no merit, no COLA, and we have included citywide event. Now, some of the next slide, please. Some of the challenges that we've encountered in developing the fiscal 22 budget include first, looking at one-time revenue versus recurring revenue. That seems to be the trend over the past few years that the city has seen one-time revenue each year, but as opposed to recurring revenue. But the focus, we really need to take a look at the recurring revenue to make sure that we're able to match that to our recurring expenses moving forward. We also saw a challenge due to the revenue losses due to the pandemic. That was from 2020, that was estimated of about $9.6 million revenue loss. So that has been a challenge for us as we try to balance the budget. Also, one of our other challenges, there's a big challenge, is the fund balance deficit. Although the deficit was at a negative $14 million deficit at the beginning of 2020. I mean, we started the year with a deficit of $5 million. So that continues to be a challenge for us as we try to balance, again, trying to focus on getting some recurring revenue to match those recurring expenses. Another area is service levels. And our current budget has reduced service levels, so we're trying to make sure that we're able to improve those service levels with next year's budget. And we saw a challenge as we look at the water and sewer rates, trying to make sure that we're able to properly balance the enterprise fund budget. One of our other challenges includes non-discretionary expenses, such as contractual obligations as it relates to our pension costs. We've seen an increase in our pension costs year over year, as well as workers' compensation and general liability, as well as healthcare costs. And then last but not least, our pending collective bargaining agreement negotiations. Again, as the manager stated, that those contracts do end on September 30th, so that poses another challenge as we try to balance the fiscal 22 budget. Next slide, please. This chart shows the general fund shortfall for fiscal 22. As you can see, we started with fiscal 20, the 2020 actual. So as you see, our beginning fund balance was a negative $14.7 million. And our revenue over expenditures generated a positive $9.7 million. Part of that is due to the land sale, which gave us an ending fund balance of a $5 million shortfall at the end of 2020, going into our 21 budget. So as we take a look at our fiscal 21 estimate, I mean, our projected or estimated revenues are at $66 million. And our expenditures are projected at $61.8 million, which should give us a positive variance of $4.2 million as long as we do indeed meet that revenue projection of $66 million. And if we do, that would give us an ending fund balance of a negative $0.8 million, which will almost get us out of that deficit. However, again, I have to emphasize, all that depends on how well we meet the revenue for this year. So if we do not come in at $66 million, that, of course, that deficit will be more. Now, assuming we do We'll start fiscal 22 proposed at a negative $0.8 million. And we're estimating about $65.5 million in total revenue. However, our expenditures are estimated at about $72.4 million, which again would give us a negative variance of $6.8 million and a projected ending fund balance at fiscal 22 of a negative $7.7 million. Next slide. And this is, this excludes any contract collective bargaining agreements. This slide shows our general fund revenue comparison. And here, really, I just want to highlight that our 21 projection, again, is at about $66 million. And for this year, and next year's proposed budget is slightly under at $65.5 million. Because again, current year includes some one-time revenue items that will not reoccur in 2022. Next slide. This pie chart shows our general fund proposed revenue for fiscal 22. So here you're able to see where the dollars come from. So you see that big chunk up in blue, which represents our ad valorem taxes, and which is a major source of our revenue. And again, this is based on a $65.5 million budget. Next slide. All right, this is as we can take a look at our general fund expenditures by department here. Again, I just want to highlight our 2021 projection, which is at about $61.8 million. And our proposed budget, about $72.3 million. Next slide, please. This slide gives you a snapshot of our expenditures by character. So as you can see, we have personnel services, salaries, and we have benefits as well. So if you take a look at this chart, you'll see again that the fiscal 21 estimate is $61.8 million. And $26 million of that is salaries, and another $14 million represents the benefits. And as we look at our fiscal 22 proposed budget, that is our $72 million for next year. And a lot of that, some of those increases include salaries, about $1 million due to salaries. And there's also about $1.2 million due to fringe benefits. We have a small increase in operating expenses, but then we have $4.9 million in internal services, which includes our fleet charges, vehicle replacement and maintenance. We also have a slight increase in capital that is due to additional funding that is needed for breeze swept, as well as the bleachers. And we also have our reserves, which that is where we have the $5 million fund reserve for the city ordinance. Next slide. Now this slide shows our building fund. As of fiscal 21, the building fund was moved from the general fund to a special revenue fund to account for the building activity as it relates to the Florida Building Code. Our fiscal 21 estimate is projected to come in, our revenues are expected to come in a little bit under our expenses, which would leave the fund with a $0.4 million deficit. Now, this really depends on how the building activity, how we get that permit revenue through the end of the fiscal year. We may see a little more revenue, but right now this is a more conservative estimate. And then as we move into fiscal 22 proposed, we would have that $0.4 million ending fund balance. Beginning fund balance, and then our revenue and expenditures. Again, here we do anticipate, and we are seeing more building permit activity. But if we do not see that. As we plan next year, we will receive, we will have about a $0.3 million deficit.
27.
$0.7 million deficit. Next slide. This slide represents a snapshot of the enterprise fund for the water sewer department, so water system rates. And these are some proposed fiscal 22 water system rates. And this was based on a study by Black and Beach. So this shows the different rates based on the customer classes. And if you take a look at the next slide, this actually has the proposed increases from fiscal 22 through fiscal 26. And just as we take a look at this, the projected water revenues with the new rates for fiscal 22 would represent an increase of about $973,000. Another increase for sewer, about $1.7 million. Take a look at the next slide. We take a look at our sanitation rates and there are no proposed increases for our sanitation rates, so those will remain the same. Fiscal 21, the budget was based on the rates increasing as of the beginning of the fiscal year. However, the rates did not increase until February of this year, so we will see some losses based on that. But overall, the rates will remain the same. We're proposing that the rates remain the same for sanitation. The next slide takes a look at our stormwater rates. And again, here, same story is that we are not proposing an increase to the stormwater rates. They will remain the same. And again, here, same story as well. I mean, the rates were effective in February of this year. The next slide includes the administration priorities. So as you can see, we have long-term financial stability as we, again, began to look at more recurring revenue as opposed to one-time revenue opportunities, as well as trying to get that fund balance to a positive status. Also looking at, so another priority includes economic development opportunities. We're also looking to enhance our customer service and community engagement, as well as continue to invest in technology initiatives and neighborhood improvement. And then another big priority would include the delivery of our capital projects. Next slide. This slide highlights some of our proposed city events, such as Hispanic Heritage, Fruit Fest. We're proposing Veterans Day celebration, Turkey Drive, Thanksgiving Day Parade, Christmas lighting, as well as Nomi Fest, Haitian Heritage, Memorial Day, Juneteenth, July 4th celebration, as well as Get in Gear Bike Ride. And the next slide, please. This identifies some of our project priorities. Again, we mentioned Breeze Swept Top Lot renovation. We'll need an additional $300,000 to complete that for a total of $800,000 for that project, as well as Cagney Park, which is already funded. The food pantry will be funded through the ARPA funds that we've received. We also have to be determined would be the Wildcat Center acquisition. Solomia Park will be requesting an additional $500,000 for that project. Then we also have our Northwest 7th Avenue corridor, Nomi Tech. We have some smart city initiatives as a project priority, as well as expanding. Our goal is to expand permitting services. We have septic to sewer, as well as additional funding for the bleachers at North Miami Stadium. Next slide, please. Now this slide Here we wanted to just talk briefly about some additional revenue opportunities as we move forward with the budget process and forecasting. We would like to look at and explore citywide parking meters throughout the city because that will be an additional revenue source. That will be a recurring revenue source for the city. We'd also like to look at the second meter base charge as it relates to our utilities, as well as advanced metering infrastructure, investing in that. And then also just look at the more economic development opportunities as it relates to attracting new business to the city of North Miami. And as well as continuing to pursue grants as we move forward. And that completes the presentation, but we do want to make sure that we talk about some of your priorities. Do you guys have any questions?
Good evening. Thank you. I had a question. On the slide that said some of our challenges, and you guys indicated service levels. What are our operating service levels right now? Because I know, we reduced staff, we cut down, time has changed, different, like the library is not open on the weekends. What is our operating level so that we can really determine where we should be at compared to where we're at right now?
Well, with respect to the parks, we've only had a few parks open just for walking. We did open up some of the playgrounds over the summer, and we opened up the Thomas Sasso pool. But generally, the parks, I would say, for the majority of them are closed. We haven't been using our community centers. So that's probably at the lowest level of parks service in a long time. The other thing is that in order for us to do that, we would probably have to bring some back for certain areas. So that's why I discussed the phased approach. When it comes to the library, we cut significant hours. We used to be open, I believe, Monday through Thursday from 9:30 to 8 p.m. and Fridays and Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And we changed those hours because we had to remove positions last year to 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. So those are, significant reductions in those areas in terms of the service levels. And generally in areas, including finance, we had to make several cuts. That has, to some effect, affected some of our billing capacity. We've made cuts in some of those major departments that were discussed before. There were also in code where we held hiring some of the code officers as well. And in general, last year, we also had cut services to the clerk's office for a portion of the year. So those were areas where we had less service levels.
So are we in this budget, or are we planning in this budget to at least bring those departments back to full operating capacity? Because I feel like Parks is operating at 2%. And when you think about, people are calling about all the parks that are closed. And when you think about park staff that are needed for, events or whatever, whatever we have going on, it seems like the service levels are like very, very low. So that's why I wanted to know in this budget that you guys are proposing, if we can see the service levels of where it used to be and where it should be and where we're, what you guys are proposing. So let's say if Parks is at maybe 10% and they need to be at 40%, but you guys are proposing a 35%. Like I know you're saying you're doing it in phases. So in order to determine, what our needs are as a city, we have to know what the capacity level that we have to operate. So I know Parks is something that everyone is going to talk about because I'm getting calls about the park in San Souci that's not open, but I understand it needs renovations. So I just wanted to kind of know what our operating levels were. Thank you.
Okay. Mm-hmm. But in this budget, just to answer that question, we are keeping them the same. We are trying to stay the course. We are increasing parks to do the phased approach. I think when we get to the phased approach, I think at some point we'd be at more like 75 to where it was so that we could continue to have some of the savings. There isn't a plan currently right now in terms of library, but we have looked at other sources, some grant sources to allow for an additional librarian. Like this year, we got a grant towards a teen librarian to bring the teen librarian back. But as far as through the full budget, we don't have that. And those are areas to think about. We want to hear from the council in terms of if that's an area to go back to increasing as opposed to other areas.
And she also mentioned that there was like losses, well, no, that in October, well, you guys, for the sanitation rates, that you guys started receiving the fees in February when you budgeted it for October?
Yes.
Was that like our fault that we didn't, like, why did we miss those?
Resolution, it required us a second resolution, which was passed in February by the council.
Okay. And in your budget, you're also proposing a water rate increase in this upcoming budget?
That fund, yes. So we had a so last year, the water and sewer rates, as you know, over the last, we hadn't raised them since 2014. And having not raised them, we had issues with the state. They are actually still pausing on one of our loans to do some of the projects that we need to do, pending us adopting a rate increase that works with a current water rate study. So we just received the final water rate study, and the proposal was a 7.0% in water and 9% in sewer. So that's the proposal that we would be setting. Last year, because the water rate was not complete, we only increased by 4%. So we didn't have a number, but we spoke to our consultants and they said, okay, you can go for a number that's lower, but now they have the correct number in there through the rate study. So if you look on
page 17, so what's the percentage that we're going to increase? So we have to, if you're saying we did 4, so that means a 3.5?
No, it's 6 this year because they already took in what we did for fiscal year 2021. So when they did the rate, they said, okay, well, you did 2021, now moving forward. So they've given every year what the increase rate is supposed to be each year.
So for this year, we're proposing a 6% in water, 9% in sewer, combined 7.50?
That's correct, yes.
I have a question. Can you please tell me what that increase is what is that going to translate on average per household to individuals?
Well, we're still calculating that.
What is the percentage that is needed so that we can get the loan?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
So you're stating, my understanding is that we need to increase the rates because we're still unable to get the, is it the loan?
Yes.
Okay. What is the percentage that is a must to have the loan?
The 6% for water and 9% for the sewer.
And where are we? So this is a 6% plus 9% for sewer?
Yes. But we wouldn't be, but there would be no increase in the stormwater and sanitation. So the stormwater is not increasing, staying the same.
So this loan that we're getting, and how soon are we, what project are we working on?
This is for all of the water plants, the water projects for the water main.
Is there
some infrastructure?
Is there something that's happening this fiscal year?
We couldn't afford to do it. We were trying to get it done. We were actually supposed to start it in this fiscal year, but they halted the loan. the concern that we have is that it's there's basic infrastructure that we need in order to make sure that we're maintaining our water correctly.
Does it have to be this fiscal year? Is it a dire need that it must be this fiscal year that we repair?
Yeah, we've been delaying it for several years. The other thing is that we also have a previous loan as well with the state. And their concern is that if we're not going to be getting the income into our coffers, that we would not be able to keep up with those loans as well. So we risk losing those for any of our projects, as well as not getting this one started. One of the things that happened during the deficit was we borrowed so much from the water and sewer fund that the balance of those funds are at issue. So the balance of those funds don't make up a case for continuing to give us loans in the future. So as I think this was discussed last year, we borrowed almost about $9 million out of the water and sewer fund, and we were, over the years, when we were having a deficit, we were getting it from those funds. So what happens is that our fund balance there are not high enough in order for us to be considered a good payee back for our loans to do our infrastructure. And we also don't have enough in those accounts to just pay for them ourselves.
Could you elaborate more, City Manager, about what under project priorities you have NOMI-TEC, economic development, and smart city initiatives?
Yep. So these were priorities that were outlined by some of the council. There was a legislation passed by the council to look at our tech opportunities and to use that, and actually directed the administration to create initiatives and a plan to develop technology here in the city. And the smart city initiatives, a lot of those would include making sure that our city is working more automated online, make things a lot easier for people to use them. So for instance, there's a lot of different smart city initiatives. Some of them include making sure that everyone's online. Some of them include having smart meters. There's just the entire city altogether looking at those initiatives.
And for Juneteenth, you guys are proposing a new city event?
Yeah, we have Juneteenth as one of the events, as it's a new holiday.
Oh, as a holiday, not a city event.
As a city event, we have a July 4th Independence Day celebration, so
okay.
matching that independence.
Gotcha.
Hi, everybody. It's Scott. I'm just here in the background for a few minutes. I've been on for about 10 minutes, and I'll be here another 10 minutes more.
Is the mayor still here chairing the meeting? Or are you chairing it, Scott?
No, I'm not chairing it. I'm on vacation in Colorado. I just ran to a computer real quick so I could say hi, listen in for a few minutes, and then go back out and have vacation.
Hi, Councilman.
Hi.
Do you want any questions?
Is the mayor on, or how does it go? Do we ask question, or do we wait for him, or how does that go?
I don't see the mayor on currently. Is the mayor still on?
But typically, this is the administration's meeting, so I guess we could just ask questions.
Right.
Okay, so this is the workshop, Madam Manager, that you proposed to us, and then in terms you'll have, I guess, meetings with us, and then you will get our priorities, or how does that work?
So here is, so these events, so that, if there's something else, or if this is not in the priority, we're open, let us know, or something that is missing. So basically, I tried to at least start the conversation with some of the priorities that were discussed, that, we discussed in the retreat, and I tried to add in some of those priorities. If there's additional, that's, I want to hear, so we can create those and make sure that they're included. So this is not an exhaustive list. This is what we understand. This is a start so that we can have conversation.
Well, a lot is missing. For one thing, District 4 is missing. But where we are, I understand the nature of where we are. It's not going to be. The sad part is it feels like every year. It's like, I'm always trying to be nice in a way of looking out for the entire greater good. But you put something on here, Northwest 7th Avenue corridors. What does that mean? That should not even be on here. What does that mean?
Well, that was highlighted as one of the priorities from District 4 to kind of, look at that corridor. So if we can add beautification to it, or we can get business attraction to that area as well, that's what we were looking at. That was one that was outlined from District 4.
Yes, but I outlined several things that's not even here. But I did outline that, but I'm assuming that I already know the situation, that there's no money there. So I was thinking about another source of funding, so not necessarily with the city. And then the ARPA, that's the funding from the Biden administration that we just got from the COVID. What is that? The ARPA? Yeah. So we've had like a certain level that we've always funded, which we were going to stay that's remaining the same. But one of the priorities we discussed that we wanted to increase more abilities for the food services and distributions, and we believe that those fall in line with ARPA, and we can use ARPA funds to supplement our food pantry. Okay. I think Councilwoman Timothy asked about the smart city, because I think we're running into a little problem, because you have your priority, we have our priority, and then when it's mixed up, it has to be very specific in terms of your smart city initiative. Either we merge them, or we know exactly what they are. I think at the end of the day, we all want to end up the same place, but we have to know exactly what, where we are, so that we don't kind of bump, the same thing or talk about different things. Because you're talking about city services in terms of the administration point of view, and I'm talking about in terms of the public point of view with my smart city initiative. So there's kind of like two different visions. We just have to make sure, how do we balance that out? And I don't, in terms of that.
Prioritize any of your smart city initiatives.
Okay.
Prioritize your initiatives.
Okay. With the I have a couple of questions for Ms. Singleton. The presentation that the booklet I have does not have any pages. But going back to, some of it, it actually did. On page 10. On page 10,
Yes.
I'm just, it says, part of the 2022 budget assumptions, no full-time personnel reductions. What does that mean?
Oh, okay. Okay, Councilman, Desmond, it means that, we did not have any full-time,
We didn't do any
we
cuts.
didn't do any cuts.
So
Okay,
last
so
year we had layoffs. We
Mhm.
don't have layoffs in this budget.
Okay, but, okay, so let me, so that I guess, just so we will be completely transparent and then to me, it's a dead on arrival because one of the things that you talked about in terms of voting for to take money from the reserve, I'm not with that. So I guess the other four, they okay with that. I'm good with that, but I'm good on the other end. So if we could discuss some other things, but in terms of because I do think that we do have to make a hard decision, like Councilwoman mentioned earlier, and it may have to be with doing some things. The problem that I've always had, and I've always said I've taken bullets in terms of us doing what needs to be done, but I honestly, and I feel that the residents have taken a lot because I've heard the word services and this and that, and I'm still trying to say what services. Because when you talk to people on the street, and that's why I urge your office and other offices to go out. Don't let the people come to you. Talk to them and ask them how do they feel about the city or services. They have been really, really good to us. So a lot of your staff thinking that they are doing them a favor, in which it should be the other way around. So I think the mindset needs to change in terms of that we work for the residents. It shouldn't only be the elected official that kind of know that we work for the residents. They are, when these people come out, and I know it's a big thing for you, and I commend. Well, it started with the previous administration, and you have really taken on the lead as well in terms of the customer service. And it's a hard task, and you really has, when we talk, that you really try to do the best that you can. Because when these folks come to City Hall, you have folks, and we had the discussions, screaming at residents, so we know it's not up to par. So when we talk about raising the water rate up to whatever the amount is, at the 4%, we getting complaints because of the situation. It was, I think, last week, and the assistant city manager was, I think, her and I were in communication, and the finance director, we talked about it. I was kind of surprised that when the residents called and she actually blamed the mayor, and thank God this time it wasn't me they blamed, but it was not. I thought it was the bill was thousands and thousands, and in reality it was $200 and something. And there's countless other people in that same bracket. So we need to kind of understand, although we get a paycheck every Thursday, that we are professionals, some of us making, 60 or 70,000. These are folks that are the national average, the median income is 70 something, we around 60 something, around 40 something. So we're $20,000 less than that. So we're not, in poverty, but these are folks who are hardworking, who may be really, really struggling. And I think that's the disconnect that we are having in terms of looking at the way administration look at the regular Main Street and us thinking that we're doing them a service. And it's not that we're doing them a service. These are folks who work hard. They try to pay their bills hard. They try to do everything that they can. Some of them may need, in terms of some help. How does that help come? They're not saying that they need us to give them stuff, but if we are trying to help in terms of if the bills could be, spread out evenly, whatever the case is in terms of quarter, that will help. When I looked at the situation, that was $200 and something but yet it was only, I think it was a $40 or $50 increase. And when I called the residents to tell the residents, no, your water bill did not go up, she said, no, I know it did not go up. And she started explaining to me that she is on SSI and she only get $800 a month and she's trying to pay her mortgage off. So those are the situations they are throughout the city. So it's not only my district, they are throughout the city. So we really need to kind of understand where we are and kind of put a human touch into it. So we have to really, really look at this and make hard decisions. We have not had events, and I've always said that's why I told people when folks used to come and talk about, oh, event this, event that, that was not part of our problem. And it's not, because we didn't have events this year. We're still back to where we are because events was less than $1 million or less than $500,000, but we did have pension. We had bad decisions that previous administration had made, that folks are getting furloughed, are getting birthday paid, whatever, like $80,000, $50,000, $20,000 a year on top of their salary. And yet they are screaming at somebody or they think negative of somebody who's having a hard time trying to pay their water bill. So those are the little things that kind of keep us late at night. I know a lot of my colleagues probably get the same type of phone call. So we need to kind of look at this. I think we, and see where we are. I'm not with any increase in terms of these people getting anything. Yes, and I've always said, if we do what we need to do, I'll be the first one to say, hey, let's go. I'm ready to go and advertise and tell these people, hey, we got to do what we got to do. We're working with you. You got to pay something. And the reason that we end up subsidizing the resident stuff is because we recognize the climate, and we recognize where the audience that we are not a lot of people making over $100,000 could afford these things. The other expenses that I looked, and if the budget director would please explain to me, I think it's on page, and did anybody, by any chance, before we go on to the other one, did anybody did any calculation, and I'm still upset about that, the annexation that this administration blew off, how much that would have added to this budget if we did get them in? Because there was 400 and something residents, I think it's 200 something homes, and these are pretty nice homes that would have been new revenue that would have came in. And the fact that we didn't do nothing on that is still stunned to me. But I would like, if we can, Madam Manager, when we're doing it, if the budget manager if we would have annexed that area, how would that have been? I can
get that number back to you. I can get that. I don't have it right now, but I can get that number to you. We did do those calculations prior to doing the annexation, so I can get that to you after.
I'm just a little curious. I mean, it's bridge into the water. Ms. Singleton, quick question. On page 13, I'm confused about page 13. What is page 13, the general fund expenditure by department?
Excuse me, Councilman?
Are you able to hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, I'm sorry. Now, I said on page 13, I'm a little bit confused by the general fund expenditures by department. What are those numbers for the proposed 2022 budget? Those are expenditures you are proposing that you're assuming might be at that level, or?
Yes, though that represents the fiscal 22 proposed budget, represents the expenditures by department. Again, those are based on contractual obligation increases and things like that. So that is the level that we're proposing to be at for 22 by department.
Got it. And well, that's part of our problem. Looking at that, and so our office, and somebody explained, I see that we are increasing it by almost $500,000. What is that? Are we gonna raise somewhere? Somebody can tell me?
Yes, that includes the addition.
Yes, so it includes some additional positions, and it also includes, additional healthcare costs. There was, a council aide position, the restoring the travel cost back. The FRS rates went up, from 49.18% on elected officials to 51.42%. And there is a receptionist position.
What do you mean? Okay, I honestly think that when we do talk, we should talk a little bit more in depth about that, because I do think that is a little bit too, this is crazy. This is just my personal opinion on that. Not when we talk about reducing it and adding. So that to me doesn't make any sense. I see your budget is pretty much in line. So that, that's fine in terms of, it could be a little, okay, but it's not too much like ours. So that is a little concern there for me. And then going down to, I haven't crunched most of these numbers because I just got this 45 minutes before this meeting. However, I do have another question. The budget management office as well. Why is a big discrepancy between last year and between this year and next year?
There was an increase for a budget analyst position. The budget office has been going with just 3 people, and the budget process and implementing the budget process, it was a need for a budget analyst.
And we don't get into personnel, but those are the things that this is where I'm confused. I saw something that said no. Oh, this says no adding or no cutting. It says no reduction. It didn't say no adding.
Right.
It says no.
It said no. It said no. Like it says no cuts.
Okay, never mind. Okay, I thought this is okay. Yeah,
because that position is from this year, but it was not the whole year because we waited. So you're going to see a full year of that position next year, which is why the number is higher.
Big concern. It's a big red flag. Also, what is IT doing from 1.9 to 2.5?
Which one?
IT, information technology.
IT, some of it is additional technologies. The others is that there were positions that used to be in IT before that in our office, and they were put back to IT. So they were originally there. So that was kind of what their original budget was before I came here, and they're back there. So for instance, our webmaster and those things that are in IT and communications, they were placed back into that budget. And there is an ERP system, and for our technology transfer over, those are going to have additional costs. So those went up when we move into our new system.
Okay, and police went up a little bit. So that's another. So the line is kind of going up. Does that include is the budget for the CRB is in there?
Yes.
Okay. In terms of but that's not what though. Let's be clear with the people. That's not what made it go up though.
So the increase includes there's 2% COLA at the end of this year. Is rolled into that budget.
Got it. The other one that I have a concern or explain to me non-departmental. So it was negative. The deficit was 187,000, and the surplus, or at least what's being proposed, is 5.8 million.
So there were some fleet payments. So at the last, when we did the budget, we had gave we had a budget assumption for a certain amount that everybody needed to pay into fleet. After looking at what number needs to actually be paid into fleet, that was reduced, because then fleet would have had, additional overage in their fund balance.
Oh, I don't understand what you just said, but I know you understand it, so that's fine. And it's a budget. Okay.
Can I just have one. I did get while you're on. I did have the additional tax increase for the annexation, which would have been $68,607.
That's it.
Yeah.
So where would all of their taxes go to? The county?
Remember, we only get a portion. It's not as many homes, so we're not going to get that much. And we're on their whole tax bill. A good portion goes to other places. So the total is $68,000.
Okay. But we still need to get that. That was important.
And it also means that we did have some expenses that would go up too, with some policing, but.
Yeah, but it's already up. That's already up. But I don't think we could compare what we would have gained from that anyway. Because, well, I don't want to have that discussion on here. MOCA. The increase, is it 100 and something thousand or?
Yeah, so we're keeping the same, but there is capital. So in our contract, we have some contractual obligations to do their facilities in the agreement. And so there are,
there's funds in here for the MOCA fire detection system replacement as well as maintenance of the building.
Yeah, so those were additional based on issues that are going on in the building that we're obligated through our agreement to fulfill.
Hey, everybody, it's Scott again.
Hey, Scott, how you doing?
Good, thanks. Just letting you know that I'm signing out.
Already. Enjoy.
For joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. The building department, why they 00? What does that mean?
Because they're no longer in general fund. Remember to move them out. So, but we keep it reflecting per year to make sure that we keep reflecting correctly.
Seems okay. We kind of increase. Are you adding a position there? Is that why it went up a little bit?
Where?
For the compliance.
So code compliance includes some positions that were not fully funded previously. Next year, they will be 100% funded. And then there's some also reclassification there as well as it relates to sanitation.
I got it. And the library is, okay, that's good. Now, the interesting part about this entire page, at least to my, from what I could see, and I'm not, I'm just looking at it as an average person. The social service department. Why is
that's down because a portion of that is from the monies they had from to do the rehab. So that was put into their budget from before. So they won't have the same rehab. They're not getting the money again from the CRA. The number that you see is what it actually takes to operate housing and social services, but it gets allocated into expenses if they're going to spend those monies. So that's why. So we're not getting the additional funds anymore from the CRA to do the housing, which was also on an expense side.
Okay.
Councilman, do you mind me asking a question while we're on housing and social services?
Yes, go on.
With ARP, because you're able to use a percentage for administration, will you be subsidizing some of the ARP funds to subsidize position in housing or any position?
It could only be as if it was something that we were like, if you're talking about for administrative costs, that would be tied to a program. But if you're talking about something separate like premium pay, that would be different.
Oh yeah, no, because I know like a lot of the ARP programs or initiatives will probably be facilitated through housing and social services. So I was seeing if some of that funding, what administrative costs, will it be used to offset some of the salaries or not?
Talk to the consultants, because then you would have some issues in terms of reporting on whether or not I'm using it for that or not. But we're looking into that. But mainly we were going to subsidize some of the programs, add more to it as opposed to use it. But you're saying to use it for some of the costs to bring down the cost here.
Or maybe even like, well, that could be another discussion when we're talking about ARP, because I know administering the services is a lot. So if we're getting ready to do, let's say, utility billing assistance, like who would be administering those services to the resident?
Usually are like smaller temp positions that don't stay, that you can actually fill out as administrative cost.
Okay, no problem. And then non-departmental, what else is included in that as well? Like, because I know
next year?
No,
like the non-departmental, like, I guess want to know, like, what's the breakdown? Like, well, I'll look in the budget book.
So
like, see
usually non-departmental is where we have set aside for, we have cases for legal, so when we have to do settlements, sometimes for payouts. Last year we added some for some capital projects, so it's depending. It doesn't have an actual department, so it could have several different things in there. Last year, and we also have our reserves in there. So we had technology improvements in some of that last year. We took out some of the reserve that we had, and the projects the projects that were put to Three Swept and to Solomia Park were in that.
Okay. So essentially, with this $72 million budget that you guys are proposing, are you asking us to say where to reduce $7.7 million?
Well, we would like to know, if you give us where your priorities are, and, we've been going through based on what we understand as to the priorities, but we would want to hear from the council. If you say, this is where we think should be cut, or we're saying bring back a budget that shows X, Y, and Z, we're here to hear that, to listen to that and take that in.
Okay. I'm sorry, Councilman, you can go back.
No. That was good, because that was my question, because as I stated earlier, I don't really see nothing in here. And this has been happening for the past, couple of trying to be nice, whatever the case is. I don't get anything out of it. And my district is actually a little bit upset in terms of that. And it's, I don't know how can we go up to $11 million, over $10 million we are actually raised. I mean, I don't know how we support this. This is really insane to me. So I thought we were going to start at wherever we were last year, perhaps maybe a couple million up because of the COLA. I understand, but this is not completely COLA. This is other things in here.
There's no COLA in here. There's no merit or COLA.
So this increase is just purely.
So, Councilman, I can tell you where the increases are. So about 2.5 million of that, 2.4 to 5 million of that is in salaries and benefits. Some of that, and then there's, excuse me?
I'm sorry, the manager said there's no thing in there.
There is no COLA or merit.
But you said benefits, so which benefit? Health insurance, you talking about?
That's health insurance, yes.
Okay.
Benefits such as pension. So, and then there's also increases for fleet, because right now we did not, for the current year, we didn't send over as much to the internal service fund for fleet charges, but next year those charges will be back at the regular funded rate. So you see increases there to the tune of about close to $2 million. And then there are also some increases in capital as it relates to additional funding for debris swept, as well as the additional bleachers, funding for the additional bleachers. And then just remember that we also have a $5 million fund reserve in there for the city.
I understand that, but you mentioned reswept. Reswept, from what I saw, is like 300,000 or 400,000. That's one thing, but this is 11 million. So That's what I'm talking about. We cannot just mention something because it's a part. We are talking about 2.5 million for staff. There's other things in here. There's 1 point something million in taxes. So again, I'm not a budget person. If let's just say you don't hire nobody, Madam Manager, the sky ain't falling off because it didn't this year, and the people didn't get the service. So I don't think hiring next year is going to make any difference anyhow. So what would happen? Where would you be?
If I didn't hire any of the ones where we're at, I think you only would be, yeah, I mean, I think you would be, it would be maybe just under $1 million savings because a portion of it is from the health event. And the
I'm not, Miss, the budget, director said is 2 point.
So remember, so salaries will go, the reason the salaries have to go up because this year we took away money from people from the furloughs. So
I'm not there. I'm coming to that, yeah. I'm saying you can hire the one, so you got 1 point, how many? 1 point?
Well, it's not even about hiring. It's if I would have to keep the furloughs in order to have that whole thing. Health insurance is going to go up.
Asking for, I'm trying to see where we can, if we do come into some type of, because right now you're asking us to you propose something where up the people and then City Hall. So I'm trying to make it where, I'm not saying that's why they do. I'm just trying to work something else to see where I know exactly what we are. And then listen to my colleagues to understand what we can do, because I don't know what everybody else is thinking. But what I'm saying is, if you did not bring in anyone, so let's just say that, would that be $1 million? Would that be 1.1? Or where would that be?
It would be even less than that because I'm restoring back the furlough. So,
yes.
So the increase that you see from this year to last year, that includes the fact that I took away from money from furloughs from last year. So bringing it back automatically adds another 500,000. So even if I said
is 2 million left.
Okay. Wait, I think it's a little bit more, but I'm doing.
Are part-time employees also included in that? Because if you think about it, Parks has no part-time employees. And if you don't bring, no, they're not.
Part-time's in operational. So
they're non-operational. Okay.
In operational. So if I stopped right now, I probably would save another maybe 600,000 because there's some things that we had there, but we just held the positions. So they were funded this year, and you're seeing the savings from what I'm expecting because I kept holding this year. So it's not so much of adding more that's happening. It's more that I had pulled back a lot of savings from the last year. And so now just to restore to status quo, it still cost us. So that's what you're seeing is the savings we got from doing furloughs, some hiring halfway through the year, which I still have to keep on there. So for instance, we had positions where the clerk held out for half a year, the attorney held out for half a year, public works held out for several months, and then they still may need them, the maintenance mechanics, but we held so we can hold those dollars. So just to put it at kind of status quo, it's not as if we're adding those. So I think the savings in terms of like if we just held and didn't add, because not add any single anything might be somewhere around 400,000. But the rest of it is because I did additional savings in this last year and I held back on those hirings, which I wouldn't be able to do because in some cases we now hired them because the plan was to hold back the half year for them in those areas, specifically in areas like public works and in the maintenance areas. And the other issue that we had this year is that we did do some cut. When we planned not to hire some, we had issues with the county with respect to our transportation fund because they require us to spend a minimum, and we actually came under that minimum by about, I think it was almost 300,000. We came under that minimum, so we had to go back and actually put in those positions because then we lose more than that. So it became We actually had been having some discussions with the county because it's an agreement with the cities that have been there for a lot of years, for over almost 20, maybe 10 years they had. I think it's since 2012. And they've required everyone to keep the minimum of general fund expenditures in certain areas. So it's stopped us from being able to have cuts, or we lose our entire transportation surtax funds.
If I could just kind of comment, I know certain, because of COVID, we had to reduce staff, get rid of part-time people, furlough employees. I think we probably need to keep staff at its operating level, because if you think about it, if you have no public works person on the street, you have no running water supply, you have a water main break leaks, and we're just going to we can't let the city just, have a break and have no one there to service it. Like I know you guys probably pass by some of the parks and they're not being maintained correctly. Like, whether they're keeping up with the maintenance plan and so forth. So I think staff needs to be at an operating level, because if you have no one operating your city, you have no city. So I'm in agreement. It's sad that we can't add, COLA and merits this year, but we just understand that we're in a pandemic and everyone is hurting. So to have a job right now is a blessing for every employee in this building. And for those that lost their employment the year prior, I pray that they find a job, because I know it is rough out here in these streets. But in terms of, it's hard to even give our priorities, understanding that we're in a deficit right now, and that if we don't reduce 7 million, we're going to have another deficit. So you're asking for our priority, and it's hard to give it when our priorities right now should be to be reducing the budget. Am I understanding that we should be reducing $7.7 million from this budget?
Yes, and just keep in mind that 5 million is on the reserve, so that would be a waive requirement, which we did do last year. I also had budgeted in savings to pay back our fund deficit. So that,
are you asking us to waive that again this year, to waive the $5 million that we're required to put into the reserve?
it may be a request that might need to be made if we can't get additional more in. If we find more areas, yes. Ideally, I wouldn't want to cut the entire 5 million out, because we have to build back the reserve. And this year, when I put in the savings for it, that was used to help us pay back. So we need to have something there for, paying back the deficit and getting it down. But yes, that would solve it. We would still be looking, that would solve portions of it. We'd still be looking for somewhere around close to 3 million to try to continue to cut.
Well, I think that's your first start, because you can only put away when you have, and right now we don't have. So I'm in support of waiving that, because right now we don't have money, and we need to generate some money, and hopefully some of these projects will kick off and we'll begin to bring some money into the city. But in terms of District 2 priorities, I've only been here for a couple of days, but I have noticed that we do have 2 parks in District 2 that are in dire need of repairs. One of them is in Sans Souci, the Alfred Besaid Park, I think it is. It's been closed, and the residents have been calling, and they're ready to start a petition, because that is the only park next to the tennis court that all of those apartments and condominiums utilize in that area. So I don't know how much it would cost to revamp that park, and also the park that is behind the library. That park looks like a desert. Like, staff didn't even know it was there. So that's another park that we can find funding. If we can find grant funding for it, that would be something that I would request. Sidewalks, lighting citywide, because there's some areas that is just pitch black. Flood mitigation, there's some places that we do need new sewer drainage that I've identified with Public Works. So that is something that that I would like to see. And the last thing is a fully functioning operating city, because I know right now we are not operating at 100%, and we should be, in order to get certain things, accomplished. So restoring, I'm for restoring staff levels, because I know it was hard being a team of one in there once upon a time, and I know there's a lot of areas and departmental areas that do need help. They do need to get some extra bodies in there, i.e. building, because I get calls all over time and time again about the building department. I don't know if we need full-time inspectors. I don't know what we need to do to get these permitting going, because you have permits that have been sitting there for years. People are complaining that they're trying to pay us money and they're complaining about getting inside to pay us money. So if we can find ways to get building fully operating and at a service level, I think we would definitely see some income coming into the city, because people are trying to pay and they can't. So that's it for me in District 2. And yeah.
So for me, outside of what has already been outlined in the presentation, I just want to really emphasize on, I have some lighting issues. I've been approached about 149th Street there, but I have some lighting issues in my district. You definitely know about my flooding issue. And then most importantly, I need something. If it's not a roundabout, if it's not speed bump, at least the rumble strips to be able to stop the speeding. I mean, I know that the county is giving us a hard time every time we ask for it. I've asked for several studies and they still come back and they say no. But in the interim, the resident needs to see that we're working on something while we're still pushing the county to do things. So the rumble strips that I've mentioned several times that are, an example of that would be when you're going through Aventura, coming down the ramp in Aventura, there are some rumble strips. If we can put that along 2nd Avenue Northeast, if we can put some along, anywhere else that can fit, if we can't get a roundabout or if we can't get some speed bump, so that we can start showing signs of slowing down the traffic.
Well, speed bumps for me too. I don't what is the process right now for speed bumps? Do we have one, or
yeah, you have to submit a study you have to ask the county to perform a traffic study. Then they perform the traffic study, and from that traffic study, they'll tell you whether or not they believe that you need those calming devices or what calming devices you need. Then they'll tell you if they're willing to fund them. They have not funded any in years. We have traffic studies and circles that date back 5 or 6 years. In fact, I think I had talked with, and I believe it's in District 4, there's one from those years. So each year we try to put that into our public works. I think this year we do have, we did put funding for 2 traffic circles, and one was included in District 4. And the
just a little councilwoman. That one was it was supposed to be, or it was approved since the former councilwoman was in office. So not even under me, and the residents have all of the documentation. And I think it was the manager who actually realized, the manager who realized that the county didn't do something. So the residents has paperwork that we approved since 20, I came into office 2015, since 2013. Well, no, they approved her a circle.
Okay.
We have that budgeted. We have that in the budget with the public works for that traffic circle. Something that was from years, but it takes a long time. And then we have
even for the bumps or the lights that flash. Is there anything that we can do in the interim, whether do we put the yellow sign that says no speeding with the little light so people know that kids are playing? Because I've heard that as well, where the speeding is getting out of control.
The county has the authority on the traffic, but sometimes we put them on our streets. Sometimes we'll try to put other things on our streets. But there has been some additional signage in some areas that have been approved, so we'll try to get them. But some are not approved, So.
And I have to go pretty soon, Madam Manager. But I'll say this: my colleagues just stated everything that they needed for their district, and it's the same thing everywhere around the city. I don't think. I have 5 parks that have not been touched, and I've been very nice for 5 years. 5, including the only swimming pool in the entire city that has not been touched. So when you talk about when the residents are kind of upset, and I tell them that, hey, I do the best that I can, but there's other 4 people that has to agree with what I do. All I could do is fight and don't vote for a budget that does not represent my district. That's all I can do. Because at the end of the day, we cannot have a budget where we're asking to raise 11 million that we don't have clearly. And then we need these things because they are. So the previous administration, for them to, that's how we got, it's either we have to do something and we know things are bad, and that's exactly where we are now. So it's like, we would like these things, how are we gonna get them? We ain't got the money. So either we cut to get our things, because we can't have both, or we're gonna pretend. So whatever that they want, I have not had in 5 years. I don't think administration could sit here and say one thing that I have gotten in my district in 4 years. I mean, I've worked and got other stuff, but in terms of parks and none of these things, and when the folks come and scream and do everything, and I said we work in it in terms of unity as a city. So that's why I fight when I say I'm not having my folks pay anything extra, because they haven't gotten anything for them to pay extra. We have one swimming pool, and every day I'm getting emails, I'm getting phone calls that is breaking down. And we had to fight. The CRA had to help out, making it a little bit decent. So it is real, because these are things that touch people's lives. And my colleagues just mentioned them, the speed bumps. We all would love the street, public works. We all need that. And we do need all of the parks to be back open, because they are essential. And these part-time people don't do nothing. So you do need to look at who you need to let go to get them on. So there has to be some decisions that made, and we have to look at, if it's, it has to be some tough decision. That would be my thing. Again, if we want some things, we're gonna have to compromise somewhere, but we cannot let, say we're gonna put up stuff, and hiring $11 million adding to this is not a good way of going up. And then we have not even added our.
Oh, and let me just clarify, for the 2 parks that I stated, they were more so playgrounds. So this is the one in San Souci and the one in San Souci and the one behind the library, because I know similar to the playground that you got renovated, Councilman, in District 4. I think that was Claude. I don't know how much that cost, but I know the last one was at Claude Pepper Park, where we renovated the playground. Those are the 2 things that I was looking for in District 2. So it's playgrounds, not the entire park. Let me make that clear.
Yes, just in that playground, it was allocated like 3 years prior. It took forever, so it's going to take you a whole term to get that one. So that's another thing.
I have faith. We're going to get it done. We have to have faith.
And it wasn't done, the entire thing. It's just a nice little thing that they did. But it was something. And when we look at the salaries and people coming in, and the people cannot even have a playground to go to. So that's why when we say services, I'm like, what services if we can't give the people a park? So we really need to look at if the part-time people, because the full-time people were working. So I don't know why the park wasn't working, and we had people at City Hall. I mean, we had people that probably shouldn't be there and had the park open. I thought the park wasn't open because of COVID. I didn't know it was because of the money situation. I thought it was a COVID issue that it wasn't open. But now we do expect all of them to be open, because all of the rec people that are rec 1 full time, they were in the park working. So it wasn't that much of a, because the breeze swept, there's nobody in there. So that one could have been open. There's no person in there. It's just the gate that needed to be open.
Councilman Alex Azume, one of the reasons why the park was closed outside of COVID, I actually had some concerns because there's some rusted equipment there. And parents came to me and showed me that concern. And I was concerned that any child playing there would get hurt or whatever. So I definitely encourage the park being closed because it has not been renovated in over a decade and needed that attention.
No, I understand that, but what I'm saying is that, in spite of what you're saying, is that particular park is, it's not like an expense. That's what I'm saying. It's not like it's an expense. So just like the west side, well, Funkus Grove, it's the same situation. We can't close it because it's open. We can't close the gate. It's the same situation. But again, if they fix it, whatever that we asking for, it won't be an expense because there's not a person in there working, right? To be, a rec 1 or rec 2. But there was that person at Pepper. So what was that person doing? And that was my question. If they were there and the people,
So, if I may, I would also like to add, so I obviously, and the manager knows in private in our briefing, I'm very concerned about the deficit, whatever we can do to reduce. But I'm also, as I hear the conversation about us, cutting staff and doing this, we have to make sure that if we're going to cut, that we're not impacting the service that we need to give to the residents. And that is my, if there's some areas that can suffer and not, suffer a half of a fiscal year, a whole fiscal year, and not be staffed, and that's fine. But if it's an area where, and Parks and Rec cannot be that. I have parents right now that are frustrated saying, this is summer, where are the programs for the kids? They're going to other cities and they're paying taxes to be serviced here. So again, I think we all have been trying our best to be very prudent, but we cannot compromise service as well.
But I think all of us, Madam Manager, I think are saying the same thing, that Parks and Rec, those department, well, at least Parks and Rec, I'm hearing, has to be, it's a vital service in terms of, well, and the pool. Well, I guess that falls under Parks and Rec. So I guess that will add to the budget because yeah.
It would add to the budget. However, we do have, in this budget, we did calculate bringing some back already. So, in the conversation that, when Councilwoman Timothy had asked about the parks and the percentage, we were planning to bring that up to about 75%. We have added that into the budget so that we can get parks back up. As I had stated in my opening statement, we did recognize that people were calling about the parks, especially, during the pandemic. For us, it was closed twofold, pandemic and for money. But if we can phase it out and start opening up some of the parks back up, we can do so with some level of savings, not total savings, but we would have to keep the level that we have currently right now in the budget. It wouldn't go up from.
Madam Manager, the part-time folks. Because the part-time people to me are really the backbone of these departments. They don't have no code. They just part-time. So what's their salary? Madam, the budget. What is the part-time people? Like, I don't even think it's $500,000, is it? Or is it one?
You mean in terms of what they get paid? They're like hourly.
Yeah, the hourly part, let's just say Parks and Rec, that department.
Depending on what the position that you're doing, anywhere from like $11 to $19 an hour.
Let me, Councilman, if you allow me, I think I can get easier. Madam Manager, I know it was before your time, but when we laid off the part-time workers during COVID in March, it was in April, what was that amount?
It was about $1 million, almost around about $1 million.
Only to parks or to all departments?
Those were about, I want to say it was around 85% of it came from parks, and it was a little over $1 million. So the total is about $1 million if we're going with parks.
Okay. So if it's $1 million, you say 75% of $1 million is already in this budget. So you need like 250 to bring them back fully. Would that be a good assumption?
It could, yeah, it's fair. It's fair. I'd like to bring back actual numbers to you, but I think that that's fair.
No, but I'm going based on, well, okay, I will wait for the numbers. Okay.
Yeah, but that's a fair number.
Yeah, and that's not a big impact when you're looking at $11 million. That's what we're saying. And those are really, really vital, hearing my colleagues and you know, it's you got a pool, you got this, you got that. So we got to do something in terms of what, you know, how this works.
Are there additional revenue opportunities or these ideas that you guys are trying to implement this fiscal year?
Well, in the that would actually, some may not bring in revenue in this year. This is more to develop revenue service sources that are recurring so that we can continue to maintain it in the future level. So we're going to look into that this year so that we can start creating recurring revenue opportunities. And actually during the, I will be reaching out to each of you because we have looked through, we're trying to pull an exhaustive list of additional revenues, and we will send and show and so that we can get feedback from the council on what revenue sources there would be open to.
And what, go ahead.
But for now, those are some of the things that we looked at that we would start to put into place or try to put into place for the during this coming year for revenues that could come to us in the future.
Let me ask this quick question, Madam Manager. This budget that at least the proposed budget that you presenting to us, is it based on the proposed sanitation rate for 2022? On page 18?
No, the sanitation rates are staying the same. Yeah, those are the same. There's no change in that. It's the same rates.
Okay, but on page 18, there's a big increase. And I know earlier you mentioned that there would be some type of increase, but I want to talk about page 18 a little bit.
All right, so let me clarify page 18 for you. The green is currently what was there already. This is from last year. Sorry, my apologies. The proposed sanitation rate is the same rate. It's not increasing.
So the green, the rate, the proposed sanitation rate.
Right.
Okay.
So
at the bottom. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Those are the rates currently now.
Okay. Really?
Yeah. So that was the rate from last year. This is incorrect, actually.
No, that's the same.
Yeah, but it's this, right, but he's thinking that I just added it currently this year, and that's not the case.
Okay.
It all happened last year, so the number is staying the same because it's saying current, then proposed, which is all the same.
Oh, so that's incorrect.
Yeah, this fiscal year is the same from this fiscal year. Yeah.
So the bottom chart is showing the different rate that you were talking about in terms of if you go on a monthly base. And then where we are now, is that what that is?
No, when we were showing this, we were showing what the cost was per month, per quarter, per year. They billed quarterly, but now you knew what their monthly bill was. It was just
Okay. And it's $98. That's just that, and then that's
yeah, and that was what it is in this fiscal year, and it's the same thing for next fiscal year. So there's no increase between this year and next year for this.
Okay, for the water. Okay, and what was the increase? I heard from Councilwoman.
So the increase is only water and sewer. So remember on the bill, you have water and sewer, sanitation, and stormwater. So one of the reasons why there was like an effect last year is because we increased they all had to increase last year. This year, we're only doing water and sewer based on the study, the rate study that's it.
I'm saying you're proposing to us to increase just the water and sewer, of how much?
So it's a combined 7.5%.
Where is it now? It's 4?
Well, no, we increased it, 4% last year. But last year administration proposed that because we didn't have a completed study. We knew it was under, but we proposed a lower number than what was there because the completed study had not been updated and provided to us.
And how much would we get from that increase?
It was for the, into our water and sewer fund, it was about 923. Well, for water, 900 and something.
973.
Mm-hmm.
And sewer, 1.6 million.
Okay, so the total is 2.5 for water and sewer, 2.5 million in water and sewer in our enterprise fund.
Madam Manager, when was that study done and completed?
It was I just got it about maybe a couple weeks ago. Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't see, well, I can't support that either, increasing the people and hiring more people and increasing their stuff. So, all right. All right. This is hard, but thank you, Madam Manager. Thank you, Miss Singleton. This is good, Roy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much for your presentation. Yes, are we ending the meeting?
I don't know. Is the mayor still on?
They've been gone fishing.
And the clerk still on?
Scott is gone. The mayor gone.
Mayor's gone. The vice mayor's gone.
What numbers I should have gone to? What these numbers? This is bad. I don't know what we're gonna do, but this is bad. Because one year the council ended up doing it and we stayed up until 1 or 2. And I hope this is not the year, but it might be because this is too much.
I think
Will the county be sending help? Can we go lobby the county and the state for some additional money? Do we need to go to DC to ask for some money, city manager, to build back better infrastructure grant? There's what, $1.3 trillion. Can we get some of that? We need something.
Yeah. Oh,
the mayor's here? Oh, Lord, now we're going to be here till midnight.
Oh, no, we gone. No, you can stay.
Yeah. We done?
We're done, Mayor. Good night.
Done.
Hey, good night.
Good night. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Bye. Goodbye.
How are you? Everything's good?
Mayor, you're
okay. Bye. Good night. Hello? Hello?
Yeah, good night.
How are you, sir? Everything's good? Okay.
Yeah, we're good, Mayor. We defunded your position, so there's no longer a mayor in the city.
What happened?
No, we're done, Mayor. Good night.
I know we're done. I'm